Hi VGM CON! How are you all doing today? I hope you're doing well. I am so excited because I am here with my wonderful friend,
Hi,
Sydney.
I'm Sydney from SmartGamePiano, and I'm here with my wonderful friend, Sab Irene.
Yeah, I'm Sab Irene. I do video game music stuff on YouTube, on Twitch. I teach. We both teach, actually, and we're both cool video game nerds.
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate for having as many people play music as possible, and learning through video game music is an absolutely valid and fun and effective way to learn how to play music. So that's why I think it's fun to talk about this stuff, fun to teach this stuff, fun to play this stuff. And we're gonna have a lot of fun with today's topic, which Sab, what is our topic?
Funny that you mention about using video game music to learn, because that is exactly what we're gonna do today. We're gonna kind of be talking about how do composers achieve a certain theme, like how do they do it. Before we can even launch into that, let's talk about like what are we actually what are we doing? Sydney, what are we doing?
What are we doing here? So for me, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but when it comes to tropes, that may feel like kind of a dirty word, but it's really not. Tropes are used all the time in video game music and kind of in music in general to portray a certain setting, feeling, narrative, what have you. So we're going to be looking at the tropes for these 5 different locations. And basically, think of them as different compositional techniques used by different composers, different producers, different artists. And we're going to be looking at 5 different biomes. I guess you could call them biomes or locations. We're going to be looking at different winter settings, different water or underwater settings, and different spooky settings, different desert and forest. And we decided to look at these ones because there's a lot of underlying characteristics and traits with each one of these different settings. And specifically in these tropes, we've noticed that instrumentation has like the biggest effect on creating these different styles. Of course, we're going to be talking about other things like keys, mode, harmonies, articulation, but we find that the instrumentation is the biggest defining feature of these different biomes.
In addition to the instrumentation, we're going to kind of be talking about what I call the fundamental musical elements. So mode is pretty much like what key or collection of pitches is this piece based around, things like the chords, the harmonies. Then we have meter, which is, really more so how we feel the piece. Are we feeling it in duple, triple, quadruple? Is it simple? Is it compound? Then we have things like style, which is like genre, and instrumentation, the big thing that Sydney was talking about. We have tempi, which is how fast or slow the piece is. Articulation, which is like how we start and connect each note. So staccato is very separated. Marcato is, there's some space, but there's weight to it. And legato, which is really smooth. And dynamics is how loud or soft the piece is. So those are kind of also things that played a role into, how we create these musical tropes. So the first of these like 5 locations we're going to be talking about is winter, and I personally love winter music so much, and kind of the way that it's created, or the things that we latch onto, is heavy use of mallet percussion to make things sound very sparkly, shimmery, specifically like metallic percussion instruments too. They're just kind of like cold, they're metallic, kind of fits the aesthetic. So, we have a glockenspiel, which is used a lot. It's very high in register and very just, very holiday winter sounding. And lots of major keys. Like, we go for this really bright, warm sound. We can talk about it all day long.
We could.
But it's much better to listen to them, right, Sydney?
Right.
So, don't worry, we got your back. We picked some examples. We have like a little lead sheet if you would like to kind of follow along. This is just the melody, the chords and stuff. But let's listen to just a little snippet of Shiveria Town from Super Mario Odyssey to kind of hear, what are we listening to? Are we hearing bright modes? Are we hearing metallic instruments? What are we hearing? I know that it's right there, but play along, please. so great. Oh my goodness.
I'm in a good mood now. What the heck?
Yeah, me too. I don't know about you, but I'm like dancing and like bopping, and I encourage everyone who's watching to do the same and to spam emotes that just kind of like reflect how you're feeling. Like, yeah, if you're chilling, if you're vibing, share some of those emotes. I love seeing that stuff whenever I do. But yeah, let's kind of break it down really quickly. Bright mode, ding. We are in D major, nice, bright, and happy. We have these string instruments, like, you know, there's that nice violin lead. Everything was very bouncy and light, kind of like Snow's really light. We had the classic sleigh bells. We had like this tin whistle lead with like all these ornamentations. It just kind of sounded a lot like fluttering, snow.
It's a lot of brightness. I think you nailed it on the head. Like brightness, anything that like images like that sparkly, that crisp feeling, cold without like being like distant, you know?
Yeah, like without wind.
Yeah, a very pleasant cold, if that makes sense.
Yes. And we have another one to talk about. This is probably one of my favorites, is Snow Point City. I'm going to skip around a little bit just to kind of highlight the parts that I wrote out. But again, let's keep in mind, like, is it major? You know, do we hear those percussion instruments? What are we hearing in this one?
Mm-hmm.
I love that theme so much. It was so hard not to sing along. We kind of don't get those really common winter tropes until where the skip was, like the ba-ba-da, ba-da-ba, ba-da-da, where we have the glockenspiel, or just like a metallic percussion instrument doing that dig-a-da-doom, along with the strings. What I think is really cool about this track is just how they create so much space. You know, when we think like winter landscapes, they're very spacious, because often it's very barren. It's just like a field of snow or whatever. So they kind of create that with like this echo effect in the very beginning, and just having these really like ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum.
What I love about this piece is the beginning throws me off. Like, it sounds like it's going to be spooky almost, with just that single line and that very echoey line. And it makes
they're all half steps, really.
Yeah.
Like, for the most part. There's like one whole step, but it's like very close intervals.
Yeah, it is. And the echoey effect makes it feel, I think space is the perfect word for it. Like, creates that space. And it sounds like, oh, am I alone in a snowy field? But then those chords come in, and you're like, oh, no, it's fine. Like, it's totally fine. Like, it's just very whimsical in a very atypical way.
And it isn't a major key. Like, we don't start with our tonic chord. Like, we actually start on the F sharp minor when this is in E major. So, like, we kind of don't get that resolution for quite a while, actually. So they're really kind of taking us on an adventure before they start laying, like, those warm chords. But then, you know, in this second part of the transcription, the ba-da-da, we have like all these really nice warm sounding chords. So it's still using the tropes, just in a slightly different way, but we still have that major mode and the metallic percussion, but then they used a few other things to kind of help achieve that wintry sound.
Yeah, especially that like the descending like idea that you have there, like snow falling, like that's some really good, like, what's it called, like poetic writing, like not text painting.
I always think text painting, but that's not the
that's
right
with
word.
lyrics. Yeah,
that's with lyrics.
Right.
Note painting.
Let's call it that. that works. Like, it's a little bit on the nose, but it is snow falling. It is that snowflakes falling.
As much as we would love to listen to winter themes all day long, we can't. But we did kind of want to take a moment to point out that we did not just pull two examples that fit perfectly for the tropes that we were discussing. we sat and we took notes kind of like on those fundamental elements and instrumentation as to how did certain winter themes play into these tropes and how did they kind of differ. We're not going to talk about them. It's just kind of for you to take a little peek at if you want to pause and check our work, or, you know, just kind of like listen to these tracks if you've never heard them, because they're all wonderful. Crash course of like how to kind of do a little bit of a winter theme.
Yeah, definitely listen to them all. Definitely like compare, see what makes it work, and, you know, bring this into Christmas music too. Like find those tropes in Christmas music, because people do it all the time in that season. Let's move on to the exact opposite of winter themes and move on to the desert. You know, where there's sand and wind and heat, and you never know if you're gonna die, but for the exact opposite reasons that you would in a winterland. And what we found in Desert Traits when picking out these pieces and when doing a lot of listening is we noticed that there's a lot of minor modes, such as harmonic minor. You hear natural there too, or as Phrygian, and in my opinion, those are the sexy keys, the sexy modes, because you got a lot of that half step action. You got a lot of those big leaps in the melody and in the harmony. You also hear the common tropes in desert music is like certain instruments like sitar and certain woodwinds, a lot of double reeds, especially like more Middle Eastern kind of sounds. You also get strings and percussion. Like you hear a lot of background, like orchestral strings, hand drums, shakers, tambourines, what have you. And again, those are the sexy instruments, like that percussion, like it's, you know, I think they're the sexy instruments because it's their stuff like the hand shakers, stuff like the drums like that, is they're in an intimate space. Like, you know, they're not meant for like a recording studio. They're not meant for like an orchestral hall. They're meant for a dance hall or a room where you're just kind of
like a small gathering, just in general. Like it's very intimate space. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think we made this connection before we started this, but I'm noticing space is like a thing.
It's a huge theme,
for these tropes. That makes so much sense.
I found myself writing the word space a lot. I'm like, that's gonna come up. It's totally gonna come up. So definitely,
it is. But like,
space is a huge factor, because I think, you know, think about how different these physical spaces are, and like what do we think of with them. So absolutely, and that's a huge part of how we can take you to a certain place. Is how we space everything out.
Right. And I think it's something to keep in mind if you guys are doing your own writing and like that. Think about not just the biome, not just the tropes, like what kind of feeling you're going to be doing here, because different spaces will create different emotions and different feelings. So let's talk about the first and greatest desert song that there's ever been ever. Is Gerudo Valley. It's a flamenco, you guys. Like, you can fight me on this. It is a flamenco. One of the biggest things you can tell it's a flamenco is the instrumentation. Lots of guitar, lots of clapping, trumpet, very Spanish indeed. Yes. Let's take a listen to that for a little bit here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's just play just a little bit. I don't know how this doesn't get you going. Honestly. All right, let's stop it right there. Yeah,
I followed the lead sheet. Yeah, I got you. So with the clapping that Sydney has written out, and you can see like there are these little like thingies above certain notes. Those are our articulations and kind of our accents. They're kind of highlighting a very common rhythm used in Latin music, which is called the tresillo rhythm, which is bum 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 bum. Like we're kind of putting emphasis, which really kind of further drives like this flamenco feeling. It's not exclusive to flamenco music, but just like a little interesting thing that I was doing that rhythm in my head. I'm like, oh my god, that's what they're accenting.
What I love about that accents, and I'm like, this just completely slaps because of like that dance rhythm. And F sharp minor is the best key. I don't know how you guys didn't know that before, but it's objectively the best key. And what's great about this, it has like this bright feeling without like, you know, being kind of like happy. Like, what's cool about this, like, we're an F sharp harmonic minor, but 3 of the 4 chords in our progression are major. But landing on that tonic of F sharp minor creates this sense of like, oh, it is maybe perilous, maybe dangerous, but you know, definitely like out there, but adventurous and not scary in a sort of way. And unlike the winter where you had a lot of like that echoey reverb stuff, you don't have that same kind of
really dry,
like, oh, we're in the desert, so like that makes sense. Really dry, really close quarters, and again with that intimate feeling, because like I think what's cool about using hand claps as percussion, like it automatically makes it just a little bit more human and just a little bit, I don't know, like less distant,
more accessible. I don't know, like that's what I think.
Yeah, accessible is a really good word for that. And I think that's why this song is so great, because like you got that repeating harmonic progression that's not hard to understand, the claps, and just like it's just very dance like, and like you can't not be in love with it. You just can't.
You cannot groove when you hear this.
You cannot groove.
We're prohibiting it.
Right. Let's move on to a different one here that is a definitely
another
valley.
Another that
valley.
With G.
That was like totally not on purpose. Those are just kind of the ones we picked. So Gobi's Valley is great because you have that very typical like oompa oompa from Banjo-Kazooie that Grant Kirkhope like put into this game a lot, with those desert tropes thrown in. So let's listen to a little bit of this and take a listen. That very corny intro. I love it.
I love that slide guitar kind of sound, like
it's ridiculous. So it's so unapologetically cheesy and tropey.
I love the little mordants. That's like the technical term for like how we kind of wrote it out.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like, oh, it's so good.
And I think it's effective because what's weird about it, that I had a hard time kind of like, how do I really want to analyze this, because the background, that's just C major, bum ba ba bum bum ba ba bum ba. But he takes that Phrygian idea in the melody with that double reed instrument. I'm not sure what it is. It's a synth sound.
If you know, let us know.
Yeah, please type in the chat, because I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out. But I think those mordants are creating like that half step thing is like, that's really a sign of that Phrygian feeling, because you go from the tonic and you go to a half step immediately in the next note in the scale. So I think he used that and just hit you over the head with it, but not in a way that was like kind of annoying, but it's just like, hey, don't forget, we're here, we're in the desert, we have been inspired by the scale and by this key, and that's why you're getting this really kind of cool mix mash of like very silly just major and kind of this like Middle Eastern exotic like Phrygian sound. It's a really fun combo.
Yeah, it's a really fun song, because I think about, you know, Gerudo Valley was like pretty light, but this is a different type of light with like just kind of how much we're bouncing around. Like, yeah, we're like really close, like we're moving really scalar, but when we have the jumps, it's bum bada bum 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 bada. Like, it's very bouncy.
Yeah, bouncy is a good word for it. And you hear not the same kind of percussion, but it's doing something kind of like wood sticks or wood blocks or something like that. Yeah. Again, a more like intimate percussion, nothing like a drum set or anything you hear in an orchestra.
You're absolutely right. It's like not super traditionally orchestral sounds that we're hearing. Like, they're kind of sprinkled in, but they are not the focal point. They're not like the main character of this story.
This is more kind of like a how to mix mash, or like mix and like kind of conflate two ideas. This is how you take like the theme or the motif of like the game sound itself and mix something with it to kind of blend something new. I wouldn't call this like, oh gosh, I don't even want to say like a pure desert theme, because like it is, but it's like also got that characteristic of the Banjo-Kazooie sound.
Right. I think like what's unique about it, what you're kind of saying, is that they find a way to inject the desert tropes but still keeping the sound of like this very iconic soundtrack. You know, they had the Barry sax the second time through the melody with the ba da 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 da, which like, is that heard in desert music? No, but it fits because that's the Banjo-Kazooie sound. I think what's really cool about this is that not only does it like use the desert tropes, but also really keeps true to the Banjo-Kazooie like instrumentation and style. So it's kind of like a really cool blend of the tropes but like the soundtrack style.
Yeah. And so keep that in mind when listening to music. Like, you're not beholden to using the tropes in the same way everybody else has.
Absolutely.
And we also looked at some other songs too. We got some other songs listed here to kind of compare. There's lots of different varieties, lots of different things you can do, but there is still the tropes within all of these, like certain sounds. You get that sitar-y sounds, you get lots of like intimate percussion.
Right.
There's a lot of variety.
There's different ways to use the tropes. You don't need like the strict list kind of thing to achieve the desert sound. Like there's a lot of variety within these genres. Sorry, I was very excited because we're talking about spooky themes, and Sydney and I are huge spooky people.
We are. We're super scary. We're terrifying.
Yeah, we're pretty terrifying. If you can tell by the everything about us.
Spooky music is great because I feel like this is the broadest biome or category we are going to be talking about today. If you're like us, you're probably like huge Nightmare Before Christmas fans. So there's like that. You got like kind of like the mix between like spooky and cute, but you also have like a side of the spectrum where it's like Resident Evil, like, oh, we're gonna die. And so there's a lot to talk about here. But we've noticed in looking at a lot of these spooky tunes, we see common tropes, and we could probably blame things like Frankenstein, Dracula, and Addams Family for using stuff like organs. You know, in the music you hear that a lot. Lots of minor keys. Obviously, minor keys are something that insinuate doom, gloom, sadness. Lots of distortions, lots of bends, because, you know, the things from the great beyond don't adhere to our mortal sensibilities.
Yes.
You know, that's not how that works. Unusual sounds, unusual keys, non-chord tones, and sometimes there are no keys. Sometimes there's a lot of atonality, and it's really fun, and there's lots of usually just like kind of rules are thrown out the window. If it scares you, it's effective, basically. We cannot escape Grant Kirkhope. He is everywhere.
Yeah, we really can't. With Mad Monster Mansion, let's kind of listen to it first, and then we'll break it down. But kind of think about the things that we just talked about in terms of minor key, like, you know, very dark, like really close quarter, non-chord tones. Like, you know, are we staying in one place, or are we kind of moving all over?
Oh, look, an organ.
We got some animal sounds to kind of really take us there. I love the frog. I just want to get to the little... Yeah.
That section is super hard to play on the piano. It's really hard.
I don't like playing that section. So let's kind of break this down, because that was a lot happening. Like, you know, this very spacious intro where it's the organ, and, you know, we have all these animal sounds that kind of like, are you like, you know, like wolf sounds, like ooh, ooh, kind of thing.
Super cute.
Then we have this dark bassoon melody with a bum 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 bum. We have like, we're kind of playing around with chords that are super close to C minor, which dark mode, ding. You know, we have A flat minor, which is super closely related to C minor, and then we like jump a tritone. I know I'm getting a little technical, to G flat major. We're kind of not staying in one place for very long. We're moving around. It feels pretty smooth, but it still sticks out to you. We're like, wait, what? Where are we just? Kind of moment. And I think that's a really solid example of like also what's happening at 33 with the they're really closely related chords that we're kind of going back and like changing one or two notes. So it's really just playing with us and using a lot of non-chord tones to just kind of create a very eerie, I wouldn't say spooky, but just eerie atmosphere where like we're not staying in one place for long, and that can feel very unsettling if we don't really know where we are.
It's very cute spooky, you know?
Yeah.
What I love is like I imagine, and maybe Grant Kirkhope can like correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine he was just like, minor chord, yeah, let's go to another minor chord. I don't care if it's non-diatonic, like I just want a bunch of minor chords. And he made it cute.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And he made it cute with like that, like the classic mpa 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 like texture in the harmony. And I love that arpeggio section when it's jumping from the C minor to F sharp minor, because that makes me think of like wind in like trees that don't have any leaves in them or anything like that. You know?
Oh my gosh, I never even thought about that. and he does use wind at the beginning of the track. Like that's actually the first thing we hear is and then we hear that organ chord just bam,
instantly creating an image of a scary rundown mansion.
Yeah, so that's Mad Monster Mansion. Sydney, are you excited?
Oh my gosh. The greatest spooky tune ever written ever is Lavender Town from Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. Like, it just is.
That is a big agree.
Right?
Yes.
It's like, let's listen to it first before we talk about it. Right? I'm curious.
Talk about this. Oh, sorry.
Like, no. I'm curious to see what you think about it, because when it comes to analyzing this, I don't think there's one right answer. To my ear, I hear a C tonic. Like I hear C as like the home base for the song, but it's not C major. It's not really any C mode, because that da 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 moves up. I believe it moves up a fifth, then it moves up a fourth, and then moves back down a tritone. So it's like very open, very uncertain. But that C still sounds like home base to me. And you even hear some E naturals, which should imply a major, but it just does not sound major to me, like at all, even a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of view the intro as C major, because I'm like, oh yeah, tritone, but as soon as we hear that E, I'm like, yeah, we're in E minor.
Okay.
That's I've covered this song probably like 4 or 5 times because I love it that much. And what's helped me a lot is to think about it in E minor, and then we have like major 4 chords with like the C sharp stuff. It just kind of helps, especially like when I'm improvising, because when I would try to do stuff rooted in C Lydian, for some reason it just didn't resonate as strongly.
C Lydian would not work.
It doesn't work as well. I kind of view it more as E, like once the ostinato kind of continue, like once we get more happening, I'm like, no, we're kind of in E. But
see, that's funny, because I disagree with that. Like, it does not sound like E to me, but it at the same time it makes sense, because C Lydian does not make any sense at all. So like, like it doesn't. Like,
it's so I think that kind of speaks to our point that we don't stay in one place for very long. Like we're having this debate literally about the intro we hear is one way versus the rest of the piece. It kind of doesn't fit that tonic implication. I think that kind of plays into what you were talking about and just what we see with spooky themes.
When it comes to like not being able to decide what it is, it's not just from an analytic point of view, it's also from a listening point of view. We can't really decide where home is, and that creates a sense of tension and unease. Like in this spooky tune, you're in a town that celebrates its dead Pokemon, and that's could be a little unnerving. And so it's really, really effective at creating that sense of, am I safe? Am I not? Am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be feeling? It's less. It's like the uncertain side of scary. Like Mad Monster Mansion felt like like cute, witches and ghouls and good ghosts and stuff. But this
versus
is just
like this is much darker.
This is very dark.
Yeah.
But like it's a lavender. Oh my gosh, it's called. That's not a dark color. That's a nice pastel-y color, and we're putting it to this darkness here.
What I think is really cool about this is like, you know, we start with bum bum bum, which sounds pretty nice, and then it's that F sharp that's like, oh my god, we
ruins
are not
everything.
safe. Board up your walls.
Right.
But like it's very, it's like plucked, very separated. Bum 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 bum, and it's creating this space. It's like very tense, and then you have like these it's a lot of drones, like bum. Da, da. Like it's very droney, which like can be interpreted as 10 million things. We could do a whole panel on all the implications of Lavender Town.
On just Lavender Town.
Yeah, we really could.
It's funny that you say drones because that's making me think of like almost like kind of like religious drones or something like that. I was
thinking like the murmurs of like the ghost of the Pokemon and stuff. So yeah, like again, like we could literally go back and forth forever. But again, it kind of just shows you how much you can do with these tropes, that there's so many sides to spooky horror kind of thing.
Yeah. I think this is the most diverse biome that we talked about.
Definitely.
Again, we got a lot of diversity here. Like even so, like Old Chateau, I had to re-listen to this because like, oh, this is like actually scary.
So good. Oh yeah, this is
actually
so spooky.
Scary.
I love it.
Right. And here you kind of get kind of more in that like scary movie tropes, like not necessarily a strict melody, definitely use of like percussion, and I think that articulation is spot on. It's not like heavy at all. It's kind of light, leaving that space for like what's gonna happen. Twilight Town, another kind of a weird one, a little bit kind of not a whole lot of melody there. Shadow Tempo, again, not really a whole lot of tonic, a lot of ambience, and I noticed there can be a lot of like vocals, especially in like Zelda spooky tunes that are kind of like that choir sound,
really close choir sounds, like really close intervals, and falling.
That sliding use of chromaticism. I don't even know if that's chromaticism, just to use all of the notes, get all of the notes all the way down. And my particular favorite on this list is the River Twigs bed, because it's just listen to it. I
don't even remember what it sounds like, so I need to go listen to it, but I love your description. So
this is probably my favorite biome. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be a mermaid. I was obsessed with kind of like underwater scenes. It always feels so magical. It always feels so safe and warm to me. And the tropes
How do they do that?
They use arpeggios and echoes, but not in the same way as Winter or in Spooky at all, where it implies like this vast space. And I was actually thinking about this when I was like doing listening and analyzing. It's like, why do we use like these echoes? Like when we're underwater, we're really subdued and our ears aren't really designed to hear sound waves in liquid. So that's why you kind of get like this muffled, really surrounding sound. And just like a lot of repetitive textures. And I think that's because of just the nature of water is like waves constantly moving, but it's like
it moves in circular motion.
Circular is a good word for it. But there's also things that are kind of arbitrary when it comes to underwater scenes, like using mixolydian is something that pops up a lot. Whole step movements are things that are really common. Harps, strings, mallets, kind of like vibraphones, voice like synths. And to me I think that was just an artistic decision that stuck. Yeah, because there's not really anything about any of those instruments that's inherently water-like. It's just a trope that kind of stuck, in my opinion. Typically relaxed tempos. You can definitely hear fast-paced and like more upbeat stuff. Like the Underwater Mario theme is one that comes to mind. But typically it's pretty chill. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. You want to take a listen to one of the most iconic pieces of video game music in history?
Yeah, I do all the time.
Do it.
It's so good, right?
Yes.
So some of the tropes that I mentioned earlier is like that whole step movements in the harmony. Like we're going from G to an F major and back to G, back to F major, and then to an E flat. What I think this does is it creates this kind of mellow feeling. Mixolydian to me is one of the more mellow sounding modes, you know? It's not in a hurry to get anywhere. It's not necessarily tugging you somewhere. It feels really nice for water, especially something that's supposed to be kind of chill and relaxed, which is funny why it's called dire docks.
Yeah, it's what's really fascinating to me, and you kind of like touch upon this, is the whole step movement. It really does take away a lot of the tension in this introduction to just go from G to F to E flat, not E. Like we're borrowing a lot from like minor keys related to G major to really keep this chill aesthetic and like this very flowing feeling with the arpeggios in the beginning.
It's paired with that E piano sound. I almost want to say like bell like, mallet like, just there's that type of E piano. I'm not super good at like the different E piano sounds, but again, that's arbitrary to me. Like that feels like someone was just like, we're gonna make this chill 80s sound here, and this is what water sounds like. Later on, you get some background strings, but you still kind of have that more reverby. It's if I had to compare it to the winter reverby, it's definitely warmer. I feel like you hear a lot more of like a mid-range frequency than you do high frequencies, and I think that's a decision from the producer, mixer, composer to make it less distant. But
to kind of make it more
You thought it was going to be aquatic ambience. You thought it was going to be that. Yeah, right. That's too similar.
No. I love this one so much.
This was horrible for me to like transcribe. There's so much going on. Can we listen to it?
Yes.
We got to hear that polyrhythm though.
Where's the polyrhythm? What?
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, yeah.
Just wait. This part coming up, I love it.
I love this. I was making a stank face like the entire time.
Yeah, same. It's so good, and it's very different than most of the other water examples that we could have talked about today. However, that being said, it still has a lot in common. Like it is in the same key, even like it does that G major thing to that F major thing, with some other chords kind of thrown in here, and it goes to an A flat major, kind of similar to like what it did going to E flat major, but in an opposite direction, utilizing a half step instead, but still having that whole tone. That's totally fine. She's just too excited. It's going all over the place. And what I love about this is there's a lot of harmonies, especially in the melody, where you have parallel fifths a lot. Now, we know in music theory, any good music student would be harmonizing their melody with thirds or sixes, but the composer is like, no. We're going to use fifths. And I think that was such a wise choice because in this song, you're diving underwater. It's mysterious. It's dark. A little scary, but not enough to kind of like deter you away.
Right. And it's also a really open sound, and especially since, like, when we think underwater, we're thinking very low. So we kind of need more open intervals because otherwise it gets too muddy of a texture. So it's to still keep, like, an open space, especially, like, you know, underwater we're thinking depths. And, like, this tune is pretty low down, like, in terms of, like, range. Like, there's some high moments, too. But the section that Sydney was talking about, the ba-da-ba,
I love
ba-da-da-da, you know, it's really low and rich. Oh,
The instrumentation is still really tropey, though. You hear that arpeggiating harps, the bubble sounds, the synth, similar to an piano sound, but you also got kind of like that 80s bass. Like you hear it.
Oh my god, it's 100% the 80s
right
bass.
You hear it in Dire Docks, you hear it in Aquatic Ambience. It's just it can't leave. Like I'm for it, but this is a trope that's going to be sticking around for a while, I think. So when it comes to like other examples that we looked at here for underwater stuff, you see a lot more tropes and a lot more similarities than you do with even like the desert and the spooky themes. Lots of harp, lots of that whole step movements.
This is my favorite biome out of the 5. Like I love spooky stuff, but forest themes, being in them, and I love the music of them. I've done way too many forest covers, but I haven't done enough at the same time. Anyway, so let's talk about forest. When we think about forest themes, they're often acoustic instrumentation, where it's like, we hear a lot of marimba used, specifically, like mallet instruments, but very heavily marimba, string, woodwinds like flute, clarinet, the pan flute, the ocarina, and then percussion like shaker, tambourine, woodblock. Something I actually noticed as I was like typing up our final notes is that we use a lot of woodsy instruments for forest themes, like you know, marimba. They're made of wood.
What?
String and yeah. Honestly, like I don't know, I never put that together. That's kind of like our primer of forest theme, if you will. And it would not be forest, and it would not be me if we did not talk about Chrono Trigger, because Chrono Trigger is my favorite game of all time. So let's listen to this masterpiece known as Secret of the Forest, written by Yasunori Mitsuda.
That single bass note, I don't know what it is. It does it for me.
As much as I want to keep listening.
Seriously? Like,
yeah, like it's so good. What I absolutely love about this is how smooth it is. These chords are really close to each other for the intro, but we have this repeating line. We're not moving a whole lot, so it feels very smooth. Similar to spooky themes, we're not staying in one place tonally. We're moving around. There's a lot of non-functional harmony, just like things that don't really fit into our key. We're kind of being transported to a lot of different places. We have like these very sustained melodies, very like reverberant, but a different type of space. Like there's an echo, but it's dry still. We have a lot of these little like flourishes, like ba-dum, ba-ba-dum. We have a lot of bends into notes, and it kind of just reminds me of like mimicking birds and like the tambourine and all the little like kind of just reminds me of like the forest life kind of moving around.
I think that's really masterful writing. Like birdsong is like one of those things that is probably super musical outside of like kind of what humans do, and we like really relate to that. And I think using a flute was really wise. You know, that's kind of a tropey in itself, using a flute to mimic a bird. But it really works here, and it doesn't feel pretentious. It doesn't feel like it's hitting you over the head. It feels really natural. It feels really calm. Which, looking at that sheet music, you wouldn't think that melody looked calm, but it is.
Let's jump 22 years, actually, to be precise. This was 1995. This is 2017. We're going to talk about Korok Forest.
Yeah, we are.
I forgot about so much of the percussion. We have bassoon doing these bump. Then we have like strings. Ba, bum. We have this flute melody. We have an English horn takeover for the bumpy ba ba da ba dee bum ba dum bum. So we have lots of woodwinds. We have like this like wood block and shaker stuff. So it's really hitting all the nails on the heads in terms of like very like the instrumentation. But what I thought was super unique was just kind of like the varying articulations where we have a sustained melody but it's really jumpy. We have like great distance in this piece just in general with like the bass line and the melody. You know, we have like a lot of staccatos, but we have a lot of sustains, and we kind of flip between feeling major and minor, because I would call this B flat major, but we start like, you know, we have this like G pedal. A lot of the melodies are rooted around G minor, but we still have this very happy feeling. So yeah, kind of plays with you a little bit, not staying in one place for too long.
Yeah, it's almost like it uses that low G as like kind of a grounding, like we are here, G ground. So like we're grounded, but also nature is constantly moving. It's neither happy nor sad. It just is, and there's a lot of life happening, and it's happening at its own pace. And so maybe that's why the composer decided to like kind of hover between those two different feelings.
Right.
It's
definitely.
Yeah, and of course you got that high flute, and I think that noticing like the difference between the ba like short to like sustained sound kind of plays in that too, playing that we're not necessarily sticking in one place here.
Yeah, I think like for like the forest details, we kind of saw a mix of like modes where like a lot of them were in major, but some were in minor and like Dorian, which is like one of our modes. It kind of just plays to the fact that we're kind of moving around a lot in forest themes. Some sound a little bit more sinister or like spooky, like Beware the Forest Mushrooms, you know, title kind of, but like it's a little bit darker versus something like A Turn of Forest, which is super bright. Those were kind of the things that I noticed, and you know, we still had like that light articulation. We saw a lot of marimba, flute, clarinet kind of stuff, so like really playing up to that instrumentation.
I think that's because the forest, like you could have spooky, scary forest, or you could have like fun, safe, happy forest. And so there's a lot of room for playing with the tropes differently in this biome.
We are not done. Sydney, explain this masterpiece.
So we decided to like kind of take this example of Zelda's Lullaby, just the A section, da 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 da, because that's a nice neutral piece that you can basically change it to anything. And of course, with the Zelda series, they use a lot of their motifs and play with them in different ways. So we wanted to take Zelda, transport her to a winter wonderland, transport her to the desert, take her to a scary mansion, and all these different places, and how we can take her tune and use these tropes to make these biomes. So let's start with your Sab, going back to Winterland.
Yes, I am so excited. This is winter version.
Very sincerely, this is my favorite of the 5 that I like. I think this is the best one.
Kind of what I tried to channel in this was using that glockenspiel lead, like, you know, bum, 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 like the metallic percussive lead, having those sleigh bells, having grand piano, like a high grand piano part that's very spacious.
My favorite thing you did was like that descending piano towards the end there. Just, lovely detail.
Yeah, it was fun to write this. I think next one's yours, right, Sydney?
Yeah, so I took Zelda's Lullaby and desertified it. Did the very tropey thing of putting a sitar and an instrument called a tempura. I really went like a la Gerudo Valley with this, and messed a lot with like reharming it too, because Zelda's Lullaby is very, got a lot of descending notes. Yeah, let's just listen to it.
Yeah, definitely.
I had fun with this.
I can tell. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, another trope is adding lots of percussion. I did some hand drums and some African shakers for that, and acoustic guitar because you gotta that Spanish flair. I live for it. That's what I'm about.
Yes.
Wanted to do a faster tempo. Wanted to make it feel kind of more like a trek or a journey going somewhere. Not like high risk, high stakes, but definitely a lot of emotion propelled forward. And of course, using things like sitar. Wanted to add like that cello kind of like.
I love that little like half step kind of dark line happening like the second time through. It was beautiful.
It's something because like half steps are really something you hear a lot in desert themes. So I'm just like, I have to do this. So
yeah,
that's basically what I did there.
You want let's do yours first because yours is kind of like first in the order.
Okay.
So do we just want to play yours with no context?
Yeah, just play it. Gonna haunt your dreams tonight.
Perfection.
So like we talked about earlier in the spooky theme, there's a whole lot of wiggle room for what kind of spooky. I didn't go for cute spooky. I went for scary spooky. Because it's a lot easier to write for that because all you need to do is create uneasiness, basically not pick a tonal center. I decided to like sing it in D major, but obviously kind of veer away from that towards the end and just kind of like let it fall, let it do a little bit more of that sliding sound we talked about. The harmonizing voice in that second half is a tritone away because you know, it has to be. Added, I love the celeste or celeste, however it's pronounced. That's probably my favorite percussion orchestral instrument because it can be really cute and really endearing, but you can also use it for like this sparse just echoey sound that I love.
And it's used quite a lot in spooky themes actually. And I loved the tremolo strings because it creates intensity even though we're staying in one place, but it's like really low, like kind of rumbling.
Rumbling's a good word for it. Yeah.
So my gosh, it was great.
Use tremolos if you want to have some sort of energy, static energy.
It creates motion without having to jump from pitch to pitch.
That's a good way of putting it.
Sydney was like, hey, you gotta write one too. I really struggle with this at first, but it's kind of showing you a totally different approach that you can take. Like, Sydney's was very sinister. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
It is sinister.
It was. Versus this is what I did.
I love it. It's
so different. Like Sydney's was all about like the ebb and flow of these layers versus mine is just pizzicato high strings doing like upbeats, which is I thought about like the interior of Mad Monster Mansion does that in Banjo-Kazooie. I literally stole the harmonies from Nocturne of Shadows. It's the chordal very dissonant harmonies and I just played the melody because I tried like making it minor and it wasn't working. I'm like, well, what if I just stole Nocturne of Shadows? Same game, we're good. It's very minimalist, which is also really spooky because think about Lavender Town where there's not a lot of parts going on, yet it's still pretty creepy. So what I loved is that we really played to the vastness of this biome, as Sydney was talking about earlier, to create spooky, but in two very different ways.
You created, I think, a little bit more kind of like, mine kind of feels like dark, you can't see 2 feet in front of you. But yours kind of feels kind of more like you can kind of see where you are, especially with that piano sound, by creating a little bit of intimacy with like that solo piano. It felt kind of a little Luigi's Mansion-esque to me. We're taking Zelda Underwater now. I went just super unapologetically tropey with this. Let's listen first. You can't
Beautiful.
you can't not put harp in a water piece. You just can't.
Yeah.
You can't not put arpeggios in a water piece. So when it came to like the harmony, I believe I was in B flat. I can't remember what key I'm in. But basically, I did a lot of that Mixolydian movement, we'll call it, where you move by whole steps in the harmony. Really slowed down the melody at first, so it was just a little bit more spacious and not rushing anywhere. Quieter dynamics, slower tempo, even though we have like those busy arpeggios to create that motion there. I did oboe and flute and some bassoon when it came to the woodwinds, and just pizzicato strings too, used in a very different way than Sab did in her Spooky, but still those upbeats. It's amazing how you could use the same compositional technique to have a different atmosphere. That's basically what I did there. Of course, lots of reverb, not to create like that sparkly reverb like Winter does, but a warm reverb, like someplace like an ocean or a beach. I had fun with this one. This is good.
Forest!
Yay!
Yes.
That's so nice.
I had so much fun with this because the clarinet and flute are recorded live. The clarinet just had that really warm tone I was after for the melody. Having the flute do like trills and stuff to kind of mimic birds, but then like come together to harmonize with the clarinet was like a huge thing. Having those pizzicato strings to kind of arpeggiate those chords, and just adding like marimba to kind of do the same thing with some rolls, and the woodblock and tambourine just to really create that texture. So really like playing with these woodsy instruments.
I actually got a really nice image of a hammock when I was listening to this.
Really?
Yeah, I did. Cause I love that you kept it in 3. A family member of mine says 3 is like very kind of circular and round, but to me this kind of felt kind of like more pendulum-y, like a hammock, like underneath the shade of a tree. Just very relaxed, very ebb and flowy, very just no stress at all. This is very lovely.
I think it's really helpful, rather, to have a scene in mind as you're trying to create this music. We just spent like the past hour talking to you about these tropes and how to use them. And yeah, they're definitely a valid tool to world building, but so much of it is like cultural and arbitrary. Would you not agree, Sydney?
Especially like what's written down here, especially desert and forest themes. That has a lot of influence about cultures who have their origins in in desert like settings, forest themes too, and of like we talked about the water one, that's less cultural, but someone just decided this is the sound for water. So if for some reason you find yourself using a trope and it's just not convincing to you, don't use it. Like, do something different. That's totally allowed. You may be the person who invents the new trope for a certain biome. Who knows?
Kind of what we said is, don't feel trapped by these guidelines. They're tools to add to your belt, but they are not the hard and fast rules.
Right.
Pretty much, if you've ever studied music or like taken a music lesson, we teach you all the rules so that you can break them. Like they're a guideline, they're a foundation, but they are not the only thing that you can do.
Right.
So if there's one thing to really take away from this, it's that these are just tools that you can consult. Like, let's say you don't want to use these tropes, but you're kind of struggling. They're there for you if you need to, or you can think about what is that part of the trope supplying to create this kind of environment, and how can I choose something else to evoke that feeling.
Think about the emotion of the place too. Like,
yes.
is this a spooky forest or is this a safe forest? Are you feeling desolate in this winter wonderland, or are you surrounded by friends and hot cocoa?
Right.
And you let me know if you agree with this, Sab. Like, a good exercise, I think, would to be, right, just a super tropey, super typical, just pick a biome and, like, go to the tropes to a T, learn to see how it works, and then that way, when you do feel like you can do your own thing, maybe change one thing about it. Maybe if you're doing a desert theme,
absolutely,
try to make a desert theme without the sitar. Like, what instrument can you do instead? Break those tropes on purpose.
That's definitely one of the biggest things that I always recommend to students, is just kind of like taking it a layer at a time. And also, we're kind of starting at the level of, we've given you all this information, And it's great that, like, you know, you can now point this out, but then the real test, I think, is applying it yourself and seeing, like, just because you have all these things doesn't necessarily mean we always know what to do with them. I struggled to know what to do with half these things.
Sure.
But then, like, to kind of start with these foundational tools, but then pick a layer and be like, well, actually, I don't want the marimba here. I would really rather it be an acoustic guitar. Go nuts. Do whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think sometimes we rush and we try to change too much at once, just kind of taking it a piece at a time.
Do lots of listening.
Yes.
Listen to a lot of music and just be active in your listening.
Never stop listening to music.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Why would you want to? It's great.
I don't know. That sounds awful. To stop listening to music. So, everyone, thank you so much for watching our panel. If you have like additional questions, like we would love to answer them. You know, like find us on social media, ask us in the Twitch chat. We are super happy to help. Like, I had so much fun. I love getting to work with Sydney. She's the greatest.
I am the greatest. I'm just
you
kidding.
are.
Like, I have fun working with Sab. She's really insightful. She really thinks about who is on the other end of the screen or at the other end of the lesson. So it's always fun getting her perspective and getting her attention to detail. So this has been really great for me too.
Yeah, so, just a reminder, like, I'm Sab Irene. You can find me all over the YouTubes, the Twitch, the Instagram, the Twitter, all that fun stuff. And Sydney, where can all the people find you?
I'm Sydney. You can find me primarily on YouTube, but I'm also on Instagram, Twitch. I have my own website if you want to learn how to play video game music. I'm your girl. I got you. Video game music and anime music.
Yeah. All right, VGM CON, thank you so much for having us. I hope everyone enjoyed, and stick around for the rest of VGM CON. Bye.
Bye.